This is the human digestive system. This system changes the food we eat into simple food materials that can be absorbed and used by body cells and tissues. Much of our knowledge of the digestive system comes from experiments made by William Beaumont, an American doctor of the 19th century. Later, Dr. Claude Bernard of France and other men of science learned that all foods contain vitamins, minerals, and one or more of three basic nutrients necessary for body maintenance and energy. These nutrients are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. The function of the digestive system is to chemically break down these nutrients into simpler food materials that can be used by the body. The organs of the digestive system that perform this breakdown of food are the salivary glands, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the liver, the pancreas, and the large intestine. Except for the esophagus and the large intestine, all of these organs secrete digestive juices, which break down complex nutrients into simple forms. The salivary glands secrete saliva, the stomach, gastric juice, the small intestine, intestinal juice, the liver, bile, and the pancreas, pancreatic juice. Now let's see how a digestive secretion actually breaks down nutrients into simpler food materials. On the left is a food, starch, that has been dyed so that we can more easily see it. This starch contains one of the basic nutrients, carbohydrates. In this form, the carbohydrates are too complex to be absorbed by body cells and tissues. Saliva, the digestive secretion of the salivary glands, breaks down starch into simpler food materials. We can demonstrate this by adding saliva to the starch. The starch solution clears. There is a chemical change caused by the digestive secretion, saliva, acting upon the starch, or complex carbohydrates, breaking them down into simpler food materials. Such chemical changes are the basic processes of digestion. The saliva has completely digested or chemically changed the starch solution into simple food materials that are absorbable by the body. The purpose of all digestive processes is to convert complex nutrients into simple food materials that can be carried by the bloodstream to cells and tissues in all parts of the body. How is the food we eat digested inside the body? Food digestion begins in the mouth. Food placed in the mouth is masticated or chewed by the teeth, as we see in this X-ray picture. In this cutaway drawing, we see that as food is chewed, it is mixed with a fluid which flows from three pairs of salivary glands. This fluid or secretion is saliva. Saliva breaks down foods containing complex carbohydrates or starches into simple sugars that can be used by the body. After the food has been thoroughly chewed and lubricated with saliva, it is swallowed. This X-ray picture shows us this swallowing action. Swallowing begins as the tongue forces food particles up against the roof of the mouth and back toward the pharynx or throat. From the pharynx, the food particles are moved down into the esophagus or food tube. The walls of the esophagus are partially made up of ring-like muscles. When food enters the esophagus from the pharynx, each ring of muscles in succession relaxes to receive the food and then contracts to move the food on. This muscular movement is called a peristaltic wave. Peristaltic waves push food particles through the esophagus down into the stomach. This is the stomach of an animal. It has been stimulated to show how peristaltic waves of contraction pass slowly over the stomach. Here, the peristaltic waves are moving slowly over the stomach from right to left, as the pointer shows. These muscular actions, or peristaltic waves of the stomach, churn the food particles that have been received from the esophagus. This drawing shows what happens to the food particles inside the stomach. As the stomach continues its churning action, it releases its digestive secretion, gastric juice. Gastric juice acts upon food particles containing complex proteins and breaks them down into simpler food materials. The food particles have been thoroughly mixed with saliva and gastric juice. They are now a semi-liquid called chyme. Occasional peristaltic waves force the chyme through this opening. The opening leads from the stomach into the small intestine, another organ of the digestive system. Through X-ray photography, we see the stomach contents, or chyme, as a white mass. Peristaltic action of the stomach moves part of the chyme toward the entrance to the small intestine at the left. At intervals, a portion of the chyme passes very rapidly into and along the small intestine. Here is an animal's small intestine, a coiled tube 20 to 25 feet long. In the small intestine, there is muscular activity which churns the chyme, or partially digested food material. Peristaltic waves moving along the small intestine can be clearly seen in the upper left-hand corner. Peristaltic waves move the chyme through the small intestine. In the small intestine, the chyme is acted upon by 3 more digestive secretions. 2 of these digestive secretions come from the pancreas and the liver. The pancreas secretes pancreatic juice, which breaks down complex carbohydrates, proteins, and fats into simpler food materials. The liver secretes bile, which mostly aids in breaking down fats into simpler food materials. Bile from the liver is stored in the gall bladder. The gall bladder and pancreas are directly connected with the small intestine through a series of tubes or ducts. Pancreatic juice and bile flow through these ducts into the small intestine. Here, the 2 digestive secretions join a third, called intestinal juice, which is secreted by the small intestine itself. Intestinal juice also helps to break down the 3 nutrients into simpler food materials. And so, through the small intestine, chyme is moved by peristaltic waves and also mixed with the digestive secretions, pancreatic juice, bile, and intestinal juice. What is this mixing action like? Imagine this balloon as a section of small intestine, and these hands, the muscle walls of the section. As the muscles contract and relax, partially digested food material is mixed with digestive juices. The mixing action aids in the breakdown of food into simpler food materials. This drawing shows us how the chyme is mixed in the intestine. See also how the mixing action of the intestine spreads the digested food against the intestinal wall. By magnifying the intestinal wall, we see that it is coated with a number of hair-like organs called villi. As the digested food or simpler food material comes in contact with these villi, it is absorbed. The food material then enters the bloodstream. Let's magnify this villus to see how that happens. Through the villus, digested proteins and carbohydrates are absorbed into the bloodstream. Digested fats are absorbed into the lymph stream. Eventually, food material reaches the body cells to supply energy or to build tissues. Not everything we eat can be digested and absorbed. Undigested substances are carried by peristaltic waves into the large intestine. Here they are stored until eliminated from the body, completing the digestive process. We have seen the workings of the digestive system. The function of this system is to change complex nutrients in food into simple food materials that can be absorbed and used by body cells. This change is called digestion. we saw that digestion begins in the mouth. In the mouth, food is chewed, mixed with saliva, and swallowed. The swallowed food enters the esophagus, where peristaltic waves force it down into the stomach. In the stomach, food particles are mixed with gastric juice and become a semi-liquid called chyme. Chyme is forced from the stomach into the small intestine, mixed with bile from the liver, pancreatic juice from the pancreas, and intestinal juice from the small intestine. These digestive secretions further break down the complex nutrients in food into simple food materials that are absorbable into the body. Through the villi of the small intestine, food materials are absorbed into the blood and lymph for distribution to all the cells and tissues of the body. Undigested substances are moved by peristaltic waves to the large intestine for storage and eventual elimination from the body. This is the pattern of digestion: mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine. The human digestive system is vitally important. When we eat food, we are supplying our bodies with 3 basic nutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Perhaps now, you can tell how the human digestive system changes the foods we eat and makes them usable by our bodies. Understanding the human digestive system, how it works and what it does, is important in maintaining your good health.